Let's start.
All right. Welcome. Welcome to the second module of this workshop throughout the month of August that is dedicated to public speaking. This is the second of 4 modules dedicated to how to be a great speaker. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank CIBC for allowing us to do these series of workshops throughout this 3 months, the summer, in the context of Level Up. So in June, we had the whole month dedicated to financial literacy, and July was dedicated to trades. And now we are focusing on the art of public speaking. So I hope you are doing well. We are going to start now. I was about to say that we're going to give another minute, but we are going to start. This video is being recorded for those who do not have a chance to attend today. So my name is Kelly Defoguin, and I'm the Executive Director of Afropolitan Canada. My elevator pitch is that I have about 8 years of experience in the non-for-profit, where I dedicated those 8 years to environmental education. Then I transitioned to the government, where I served as a public servant. I worked for different ministries. And so now I am focusing basically on Afropolitan Canada, which I've been the executive director and founder for almost 11 years. I'm a new mom, so I'm also on my mat leave right now. I'll say a serial entrepreneurs, a couple of businesses that did not go through, and I'm about to launch a new business very soon. So stay tuned, and I enjoy traveling. So if you want to connect with me, I'm very active on Instagram, on LinkedIn, or you can always send me an email, and I'll be happy to reply and then have a conversation with you. So let's start by the land acknowledgement, especially in the climate that we're currently in Canada. I think the land acknowledgement is more than valuable because that is how we ensure that the reconciliation, but also the conversation with the Indigenous communities continues, and we give the respect and acknowledge also the atrocities that our country has contributed to. So let's do the land acknowledgement before we start this module. So we would like to begin by acknowledging the land on which we gather across the province of Ontario and beyond. The province is covered by many treaties, such as the Dish with One Spoon Treaty, Upper Canada Treaties, James Bay Treaty 9, London Township Treaty 6, Manitoulin Island Treaty 45, Treaty 13A, Treaty 3 of 1792, Treaty 5 of 1875, Robinson-Huron Treaty, and the Williams Treaties. As settlers, we are grateful for the opportunity to meet here, and we thank all of the generations of people who have taken care of the land for thousands of years. Long before today, as we gather here, there have been Indigenous peoples who have been stewards of this place. Okay, so outline. So we had our first module last Tuesday, and during that time, I gave an overview of what public speaking looks like. We covered why communication is so important nowadays and said that it's because communication simply brings people together. It promotes passing information to other people. It helps in decision making and on how you communicate you know, the way you communicate will definitely have an impact on your desired outcome. So we also saw that there were 4 types of communication overall. The verbal communication that essentially focus on content, your tone, and the pitch. You have also the nonverbal communication that is all about facial expression, as well as eye contact, gesture, and physical touch. We talked about written and visual communication, which are essentially about the content, the structure, the clarity, and the alignment. And so we finally spent a little bit of time, or a big chunk of time, I should say, on the elevator pitch that I actually presented with myself. We saw that the elevator pitch is a summary of our professional background and the experience. And we saw that the elevator pitch should be short. It should be between 30 to 60 seconds, not more. It should be sweet. It should focus on the essentials. What are you trying to convey to the person you're meeting right there? You know that you have 1 minute to shoot your shot. So it should be positive and persuasive, and it should be practiced many times. Additional to that, I did say that it's important to have more than one elevator pitch in your back pocket, depending on the context you're in. You need to at least have 2 elevator pitch. So today we will talk about what makes a great speaker. And next week, I'm thinking of combining module 3 and module 4. They're relatively short, so that can fit into one. So technically next Tuesday will be our last module. This module also will not last more than an hour because we obviously have a very, very tiny group today, and this is the kind of workshops that also do require a little bit of back and forth between me and you. So I'm guessing this one will take less time because we'll have to adapt basically to a theoretical content. But please do not hesitate. If you do have any question, I'll definitely be happy to answer those questions. So I like to start by sharing this TED Talk with you. There is a TED Talk by Chris Anderson. Let me stop here and then share my screen. Okay. And it is by Ted Anderson. And he is really talking about the secret to great public speaking. Let me know if you can hear. Fatima, let me know if you can hear.
Yes.
Okay, so let me just make sure that it is centered.
People think that there's a TED Talk form.
Oops. All right, Kelly, get it together. There you go.
Give a talk on a round red rug, share a childhood story, divulge a personal secret, end with an inspiring call to action.
Okay, there you go.
Some people think that there's a TED Talk formula. Give a talk on a round red rug, share a childhood story, divulge a personal secret, end with an inspiring call to action. No, that's not how to think of a TED Talk. In fact, if you overuse those devices, you're just going to come across as cliched or emotionally manipulative. But there is one thing that all great TED Talks have in common, and I would like to share that thing with you. Because over the past 12 years, I've had a ringside seat listening to many hundreds of amazing TED speakers like these. I've helped prepare their talks for prime time and learn directly from them their secrets of what makes for a great talk. And even though these speakers and their topics all seem completely different, they actually do have one key common ingredient, and it's this. Your number one task as a speaker is to transfer into your listeners' minds an extraordinary gift, a strange and beautiful object we call an idea. Let me show you what I mean. Here's Haley. She is about to give a TED Talk, and frankly, she's terrified. Over the course of 18 minutes, 1,200 people, many of whom have never seen each other before, are finding that their brains are starting to sync with Haley's brain and with each other. They're literally beginning to exhibit the same brainwave patterns. And I don't just mean that they're feeling the same emotions. There's something even more startling happening. Let's take a look inside Haley's brain for a moment. There are billions of interconnected neurons in an impossible tangle. But look, here, right here, a few million of them are linked to each other in a way which represents a single idea. And incredibly, this exact pattern is being recreated in real time inside the minds of everyone listening. That's right. In just a few minutes, a pattern involving millions of neurons is being teleported into 1,200 minds just by people listening to a voice and watching a face. But wait, what is an idea anyway? Well, you can think of it as a pattern of information that helps you understand and navigate the world. Ideas come in all shapes and sizes, from the complex and analytical to the simple and aesthetic. Here are just a few examples shared from the TED stage. Sir Ken Robinson, creativity is key to our kids' future.
My contention is that creativity now is as important in education as literacy, and we should treat it with the same status.
Laura Hardy, building from bamboo is beautiful.
It is growing all around us. It's strong, it's elegant, it's earthquake resistant.
Chimamanda Adichie, people are more than a single entity.
The single story creates stereotypes. And the problem with stereotypes is not that they are untrue, but that they are incomplete.
Your mind is teeming with ideas, and not just randomly. They're carefully linked together. Collectively, they form an amazingly complex structure that is your personal worldview. It's your brain's operating system. It's how you navigate the world. And it is built up out of millions of individual ideas. So, for example, if one little component of your worldview is the idea that kittens are adorable, then when you see this, you'll react like this. But if another component of your worldview is the idea that leopards are dangerous, then when you see this, you'll react a little bit differently. So it's pretty obvious why the ideas that make up your worldview are crucial. You need them to be as reliable as possible, a guide to the scary but wonderful real world out there. Now, different people's worldviews can be dramatically different. For example, how does your worldview react when you see this image?
What do you think when you look at me? A woman of faith, an expert, maybe even a sister, or oppressed, brainwashed, a terrorist?
Whatever your answer, there are millions of people out there who would act very differently. So that's why ideas really matter. If communicated properly, they're capable of changing forever how someone thinks about the world and shaping their actions both now and well into the future. Ideas are the most powerful force shaping human culture. So if you accept that your number one task as a speaker is to build an idea inside the minds of your audience, here are 4 guidelines for how you should go about that task. 1, limit your talk to just one major idea. Ideas are complex things. You need to slash back your content so that you can focus on the single idea you're most passionate about and give yourself a chance to explain that one thing properly. You have to give context, share examples, make it vivid. So pick one idea and make it the through line running through your entire talk so that everything you say links back to it in some way. 2, give your listeners a reason to care. Before you can start building things inside the minds of your audience, you have to get their permission to welcome you in. And the main tool to achieve that, curiosity. Stir your audience's curiosity. Use intriguing, provocative questions to identify why something doesn't make sense and needs explaining. If you can reveal a disconnection in someone's worldview, they'll feel the need to bridge that knowledge gap. And once you've sparked that desire, it will be so much easier to start building your idea. 3, build your idea piece by piece out of concepts that your audience already understands. You use the power of language to weave together concepts that already exist in your listeners' minds. Not your language, their language. You start where they are. The speakers often forget that many of the terms and concepts they live with are completely unfamiliar to their audiences. Now, metaphors can play a crucial role in showing how the pieces fit together because they reveal the desired shape of the pattern based on an idea that the listener already understands. For example, when Jennifer Kahn wanted to explain the incredible new biotechnology called CRISPR, she said, "It's as if for the first time you had a word processor to edit DNA. CRISPR allows you to cut and paste genetic information really easily." Now, a vivid explanation like that delivers a satisfying aha moment as it snaps into place in our minds. It's important, therefore, to test your talk on trusted friends and find out which parts they get confused by. 4. Here's the final tip. Make your idea worth sharing. By that I mean, ask yourself the question, who does this idea benefit? And I need you to be honest with the answer. If the idea only serves you or your organization, then I'm sorry to say it's probably not worth sharing. The audience will see right through you. But if you believe that the idea has the potential to brighten up someone else's day, or change someone else's perspective for the better, or inspire someone to do something differently, then you have the core ingredient to a truly great talk, one that can be a gift to them and to all of us.
Rakuten is an awesome way.
Okay, so this was a video by Chris Anderson, who's now the head of TED Talks, and he is sharing essentially tips on or secrets, I should say, on public speaking. Chris Anderson was a British journalist and also publisher. And for those who were here last week, if you paid attention to how he was speaking, you will see that he presented some of the nonverbal and verbal communication cues we addressed last week. And if you listen carefully, he gave 4 tips basically as to how to have a great delivery of your communication, of your presentation or speech. So my questions here were essentially to know, you see here 4 public figures. You see the 44th president of the United States, Barack Obama, and then you see Malcolm X, you see Ms. Oprah Winfrey, and obviously the late Steve Jobs. And all these 4 folks had in common, everybody knows they were amazing speakers. They are amazing speakers. 2 of them are no longer with us. But what made them great speakers are essentially the fact that they were able to deliver the message clearly. They had that sort of self-awareness, right? And introspection, which is that they were able to master the ability to start with their why they do what they do before telling you what to do. And that is so important because it takes storytelling. It takes that to be able to deliver that kind of message, to be essentially that kind of speaker of that envergadure. They are also good at getting the emotional buy-in before getting, the action. And so that's essentially what they have in common. In terms of their attributes, we know that they're super succinct. They're able to tell the story. They have this awareness of their audience. But what is essential is that they are passionate about what they say and they're super confident. And then the third question is really what holds people back from being good at public speaking, I should say, is essentially anxiety, stress, and lack of confidence. So what makes a confident speaker overall? A confident speaker is someone who's thoughtful with their words, who recognizes the impact of language, and has a facial expression that reflects what they mean, what they're saying. It reflects their mood. It also reflects the texture. And the confident speaker is someone whose voice owns the message. It has to be consistent throughout. From the beginning to the end of that message, the voice has to be consistent. They're willing to be vulnerable. And that's essentially the key part of storytelling. You have to go and touch that soul. And in order to do so, you gotta be vulnerable. You gotta accept that part of the job is to let your guard down, to be as free and as open to your audience as possible. You gotta touch that soul and to make your audience listen to you. As a good speaker, you gotta be connected to yourself, but as well as to the audience you're talking to. And all of those qualities come together so the speaker sounds and looks like they know what they're talking about. So you ask me, what do you mean, Kelly, when you say connect to yourself, like to myself? And in order to be a great speaker, it's important to center ourselves by asking ahead of a presentation, no matter what you're doing, you got to ask yourself, how do you want to be seen? How do you want to be perceived? Because what often happens is that people throw a lot of big words there and left and right and start speaking in circle. And because they do that, they're so deep in their own head. And that's how you lose the attention of your audience, by being detached and disconnected because you have not thoroughly organized your thoughts, the why you're speaking and how can this information be consumed. So you have to ask yourself the following question in order to center yourself before and during your communication. What is the presentation and the speech? And that question is, what words will I use to describe how I have connected with others, right? And so when you ask yourself that question, some of the key words you're looking for is, I want to be perceived as being confident. I want to be perceived as being clear, that my presentation skills offer a clear message. I want to be perceived as I delivered a succinct messaging. Also, I want to be perceived as engaging. My presentation was informative, helpful. Was it concerning? My presentation was interesting or enlightening, and even more so. So you have to think how, like before even jumping into that call or that presentation, okay, this is the goal of my presentation. This is how I want to be seen today. And so you see, by figuring out how you want to be perceived during that communication with others, which is the power of connecting with yourself, then you're also allowing direction to how you want to be connecting with your audience. Okay. And so we said earlier, what does it mean? Like the question, what does it mean to connect with others? We saw in a previous workshop, in a previous module, that a conversation is a two-people conversation or more than one person. And it's all about the delivery of a communication to one or more people. So connecting with others simply means delivering thoughts to a person or a group of people. And although it seems easier said than being done, it's all about practice. After identifying how you like to be perceived, you now have to work on how to deliver your message. And the key is like, do you really want to give too much detail when you're presenting? Do you want to be so fast because you want to move on with this presentation and that's it, you're so stressed? or do you want to engage in a two-way communication that even though you might be the only one talking in the room, I should say, it feels like your audience is responding back to you with an active listening. And that is super important. You can tell when your audience is listening to you just by their eyes following you when you walking, using the space you are in, if that's an in-person. They're connecting with you because they're following you, right? They're nodding and they're smiling, they're smizing, all of that, right? So here is how you can connect with others, right? One thing is that you gotta deliver one thought at a time, and that is also what Chris Anderson was also talking about. When you're delivering one thought at a time, it's like you're talking to a kid and you're observing if that kid is digesting that information you just provided to them. So your focus will automatically shift from being on you to be on the audience and the understanding of your messaging. And that in itself can be so powerful and boost your confidence, right? Because you're waiting in and saying, if they're not absorbing, then you're just readjusting, and or you're just asking, did I make myself clear, for instance? If they say no, then you take another route to make sure, because that's how you talk to a kid as well. It's like if they're not understanding you, you use another way of making your message clear. And so in that sense, you could do the same way. And then the same thing here, sorry. And then the second way of you connecting with others is to breathe. I mean, how many of us have experienced fast breathing or slow breathing during moments of nervousness? I know some people who have completely stopped breathing because they're flushed, they're scared, they're anxious. So when we become stressed, our body releases the stress hormones that are essentially cortisol and more adrenaline. Then these hormones go to your central nervous system, right? And these hormones are responsible for increased heart rate, high blood pressure, dilated pupils, dry mouth, and sweating. Then we become essentially triggered and so disoriented due to that we basically lose track of our thinking, and then as a result we go into I should say freeze and go into a fight and flight mode. And so learning to breathe properly soothes your nervous system, because the oxygen that you inhale will go into your internal body, and then it will help build the internal body heat. And naturally that heat will relax your sympathetic portion of the autonomic nervous system. And that's the part of the nervous system that triggers panic. So if you do, like even if you are in that instance of a panic attack, or you're rushing through your words and you're losing track, that simple inhaling moment brings that heat into your internal system and it will calm you down. And that's essentially what you need. So even when you're having that presentation, just like I am talking right now, is taking that pause and breathing in between, because that's how I remain relaxed during my presentation. So try to do that and it will help you stay calm and focus on your presentation essentially. So building a great messaging. We know that preparation is the most important component of public speaking. And to be honest, at the end of the day, you want your audience to remember you. And that comes with the message you prepare for them. So to be an excellent speaker, it means that you need to identify the audience you're speaking to. If you're getting an invitation to a conference or your boss is asking you to do a presentation on X, Y, and Z, you gotta make sure that you know your audience in order to tailor your message to them. So this means don't be afraid to ask your host or your boss the following questions like, who is my audience? Who will be attending? what is the level of knowledge that you want me to cover on this topic? Or how informed are they on this topic? And basically, when they answer those questions, then you get a clear picture of your audience and prepare your content efficiently. Then you also need to have a meaningful structure of the message, right? And here, before even starting writing your presentation content, it is a must to identify what is the desired outcome or the learning objective of your presentation. What are you hoping to do here? Are you trying to persuade an audience? Or are you presenting a recommendation to your boss? Are you introducing a new idea? Once you have identified the outcome, you gotta choose the words to develop that content, right? So what is that desired outcome or the learning objective? Is it to persuade? Is it to inform? Or is it to inspire? So you will want to persuade when you're delivering a sales pitch or a sales presentation, for example. You're selling a car, right? Then you get to persuade. Then you will want, if you are, if you are informing, for instance, then you will need to educate on the topic through a webinar or workshop, because the education is a component information. Then if you want to inspire, then you have to connect with the emotions there to move your audience. So again, persuasion is when you're trying to sell or when you're trying to convince of a sell or anything. Then information is when you're educating people, right? So it could be, listen, we're talking about cryptocurrency in our last workshop. So that was really about information, informing people. And then inspiring is so much about what these great speakers have been doing. You know, like if you're talking about Steve Jobs, if you're talking about Malcolm X, if you're talking about Barack Obama, or even Oprah, those are inspiring leaders. Those are inspiring speakers. Then you jump into the next element of what makes you an excellent speaker, which is organizing your thoughts. To help you organize your thoughts, I recommend identifying the purpose of your presentation, as I said earlier. There's no other way around. You have to always go back. What is the purpose of my presentation? And then you need to create the main ideas for that purpose. Now, remember, Chris Anderson said, limit yourself to one idea. And it's important because you don't want to lose your audience when you're speaking. I say go up to 4, because it depends on who is your audience, but do not go beyond 4, because otherwise it's going to be too long and you're losing your audience. So remain between that 1 to 4 ideas to cover. Once you have your ideas to cover, get the details for each one you will cover, then assemble your content. So if you have one idea, you can get it as many details for that idea as you want to, but don't be too long. Let's remain in that length. But then if you're going from 1 to 4, you gotta be careful as the amount of detail that you're putting in there for each one of them. You still want to keep your folks interested, right? So make sure that it is succinct, it is short, and it is straight to the point. Then, to organize your thought, you need to have an outline to keep you focused while you gather your research and provide a structure to your talking points. And in order to have a great outline, you need to know that there are 4 types of outline. Either a descriptive outline is often used for speeches and educational training because it provides an overview of the subject matter. The other outline is a problem solution outline, and it is used for persuasions like sales presentation. So here's a problem. We need to reduce the emissions of gas in the air. The solution: buy more efficient cars, for instance. Then you have the chronological outline, which is used to either go back or forward in time. And this is happening actually quite a bit now, especially in the context of COVID, because we need now, there are a lot of presentation and research being done. What is the world going to look like post-COVID? So in that case, that is a chronological outline. And then you have the geographical, the regional outline that is focusing on the geographical purposes. So those are four, I will say, outlines that you can always use for whenever you're preparing your speech, your communication. And then make sure that you have an engaging introduction. Your introduction is so important. You must give your audience a reason to listen. So within the first 2 sentences, you gotta tell them the single most important reason why they are listening to you, why they are engaging in the presentation that you are doing right now. If you are not able to present your objective, what you're doing in the first 2 sentences, then you got to go back to the drawing board. It's important that in that introduction, you're telling them why they're there and why they should stick through that presentation. And then finally, when you have done your whole presentation, the conclusion is also a key element. You gotta reiterate the purpose of that presentation in your conclusion in the most clear, straight to the point manner, right? So that is how, those are basically how you build that great, some elements of how you build a great messaging. Then you need to have a meaningful content. So then we talked about your introduction. You need to have a meaningful, engaging intro. Then you need to make sure that you're reiterating the purpose in your conclusion, but in between, your content gotta be meaningful. And by that, I mean that you have to have the outline and the ideas. You need to develop the meaningful content with your story and a couple of simple words. And by this, I mean, use words that are so simple that even a 3rd grade student can hear you, can understand what you're saying, okay? Oftentimes, we want to use big words and because, you know, either we are way too in the specificities of our field, or we just want to show that we know better than everybody else. And that is a no-no. Always make sure that you're using a simple vocabulary because you don't know who is in the audience. And so you don't want to leave people out. People where English is probably their 2nd or 3rd language, you don't want to do that. And also don't want to make people feel intimidated or out of place. And so you don't want to make your audience feel like they are less educated than you or less knowledgeable than you. So bottom line, just use simple words. Even if you have one of those like specific words or jargon, Google is your friend. Go and find a simple synonym so that people can relate to what you're saying. And then so connect when possible to your story. And we are stories consumers in a big part because of social media. So your presentation needs to be connected to a story, which in fact will make your story memorable. So what happened to somebody and how is that proving the point you're making is what is going to connect your audience to your story. For example, I can connect the value of investing in real estate to my personal wealth. So folks like to have tangible, real examples, and oftentimes it comes with storytelling. So you gotta also be good at storytelling. Always related to your story. You don't always have to say, for example, you could connect it, you can jazz it up a little bit and say, for example, one of my friends, for example, my mom, for example, my daughter, but make it relatable, personify it, personalize it, sorry. And so people can then, you know, take it from an imaginative story to something real. And in doing so, they will remember you, right? They will remember, oh, Kelly, or I will say, Sarah, I remember Sarah's story about this and that, X, Y, and Z. So make sure that it is always relatable. But then I will always say this, and again and again and again. Use short sentences. I will tell you right now, nobody has time for long-winded sentences. Nobody likes them. Nobody has time for detailed sentences. I do not have time for them. So get to the point immediately. And that's how you catch and maintain the audience attention. Okay. Well, that is essentially what I wanted to present today. I was hoping for a bigger conversation because some of the questions were more of a back and forth, and then having conversations around it. So last webinar, we worked on developing an elevator pitch, and I'm hoping that you all had the time to take that and then create your elevator pitch. So now what I'm requesting from you is to develop and share a short presentation based on what we have just covered. It shouldn't be more than a 5-minute presentation. You identify the topic that of your choice, right? And then you apply the elements that we basically covered today, which are essentially know who is your audience, right? And having a meaningful structure to the message. So what is the outcome? So after you have delivered, you have identified your audience, I'm expecting that you will take a pen and paper and then create your outline. And by outline, it means that identify what is your desired outcome of the learning or the learning objective of your presentation. And then ask yourself if you want to persuade, inform, and inspire. As soon as you have those two elements, then now on your outline, ask yourself, what are the ideas you want to present? Are they descriptive? Is it a problem solution, a chronological, or a regional? As soon as you have those 4 ideas, it could be 1 or up to 4, then start drafting your introduction, and then as well start working as what that conclusion will look like. Your introduction, something that works for me is that usually my introduction and my conclusion often inform the content. So the meat of the presentation. And it doesn't mean that your conclusion is set in stone, no. You could always come back and revisit your conclusion, and we'll revisit your introduction. But when you work those 2 parts, usually they inform the middle part. And then once you are done working on your introduction and conclusion, then start working on your content, right? And make sure that you are using simple words, that you are connecting somehow your content to your story, and then use short sentences. And so if you have any questions, please make sure to drop us a little bit of info on Afropolitan Canada on Facebook. You can also find us on Afropolitan Canada on LinkedIn or on our website, afropolitancanada.ca. As I said, next week we are going to cover the remainder of the webinar. So we will be covering module 3 and module 4. And so they will essentially be about practice makes it better. So I'll be providing tips as to how to make your presentation top-notch presentation. And the fourth module will be just tackling the fears. What are the fears that we feel when we're going into the presentation mode, and how to address them, how to fake it till we make it, basically. So that is it for me today. I thank you all for joining me. This presentation will be available on our website. And I want to thank once again CIBC for making this happen for us at Afropolitan Canada. Thank you.